right, it's fine and neutral. Nick is off today. He's in some Caribbean place doing scuba diving.
Again.
So Travis and I are going to hold it down. This is fine and neutral, if I didn't say that already. And we had an idea for this podcast. We just went riding today. While we were out riding, it just turned into like a random good day because other people showed up that we knew, and it turned into a pretty good little ride. It definitely wasn't planned. It just kind of worked out. But while we were out on the ride, we stopped at our normal, I don't know what you want to call it, hangout that we have in Kentucky, where riders typically just kind of come and go. It's an abandoned general store that's been abandoned. God, who even knows? Definitely
ever since I've been going, and it's been 6-8 years or better.
Since I've been going, it's been 15 years, and it's been abandoned the whole time. But the people who own it allow us to chill there, and they actually keep the place relatively nice for an abandoned building. But
the important parts to us are always well kept.
Yeah, and like there's a outhouse you can use. There's tables to sit at. There's a bench. There's all kinds of good stuff. Yeah. This is a cool place to hang. But we were talking about a buddy of ours just got a new to him motorcycle. He bought a 2018 S1000 single R BMW, and he's super stoked. This dude has been riding the same R6 since the Stone Age, and that R6 has been through hell and back. It had like 80,000 plus miles on it. It's had multiple motors. It's been rebuilt several times. He's crashed the heck out of it multiple times. Like, this thing has just had a storied history. And he always
sweet paint jobs though.
Yeah, painted it with rattle can, and he's an artist, man. Like he could do it.
I saw another bike online, just on the interwebs. Some other random person, I'm pretty sure no connection to him at all, but had the same style of artwork that he did on the green on the R6.
When you did the green?
Like how it was, like, I guess it's cell shaded, but it's like flat, but like artsy, but like where all the corners and the edges and stuff are all like, it was done the exact same way, just different colors. But I was like, that's the same paint job. I'm like, it looks so good. I don't know. I really like that green paint job that he did on that.
I like his Dragon Ball Z paint job that he did. And what I like about that even more is he's not a Dragon Ball Z fan. Like, that's not his thing. He's not into anime and stuff like that. His son, who's a little kid, his son's like 7 years old or something. His son liked Dragon Ball Z. And when he asked his son, what color should I paint the bike? His son was just like, Dragon Ball Z. And so he did. He just went ahead and did a Dragon Ball Z theme, and it worked out, and it was done really well. It looked really cool. But anyways, he got that new bike, and he went from like a 20-year-old R6 to a modern machine. Kind of sparked an idea for this episode, and that is that how privileged we are as motorcycle riders to be blessed with these modern machines. And in our opinion of them, they are so much better than bikes of yesteryear for multitudes of reasonings that we'll kind of walk through. And I know there's a lot of folks out there that genuinely think that older bikes were better for some reason. They think that, like, oh, I don't need all that electronic crap, or there's more things on there to fail and all this. I hear like all these sorts of reasons, but when you actually go through the data and go through the logic of it, it just falls right apart, like so badly onto its face. What's some of the things that about modern motorcycles are better than older motorcycles that brings to mind for you?
So, I mean, if we start at the bottom, we look at just the core elements, let's start at the frame. Modern materials and manufacturing has allowed frame types. And it's funny that over the course of all of the history of motorcycles, we started with wood essentially because that's what we built everything out of back then. But then, we very quickly moved to steel, and then, in the 70s, 80s, 90s and stuff, we started trying to do different hybrid types of frame styles where we would put aluminum in some places and still use steel in certain other places. Then we started going to basically like all aluminum. We were doing total frames out of aluminum, and then we did stressed members on the engines and all this stuff. And now we've kind of come full circle, and most bikes now, I think, are steel frames again because they've gotten so good at making them, and the engineering behind it, the computerized engineering that has allowed all this like stress testing, all this fatigue testing. They can do all of these different things where they can model it 17 million different ways and figure out which one is best without even actually making one. They don't even have to make one, and they can know which way is better to do it. And now we have these trellis frames on these bikes that are so lightweight that the bikes weigh 100 pounds less than a bike from 10 years ago that's the same equivalent bike. So just right off the rip, just the frames are way better today than they were 10 years ago.
Like to your point, the new, like one of the heavy bikes, a historically heavy bike, is the BMW GS. Whether it was the R1100, the R1150, the R1200, 1250, so on and so forth. For the 1300, the newest iteration of the BMW GS, the new R1300 GS or the new R1300 GS Adventure, the weight is significantly down, and it has to do with a newer modern style frame. And a lot of the internet was really upset that they took away the old frame because that was the true GS, had that old frame in it. And it's like, well, I would rather have performance and ongoing improvement than hold on to yesteryear technology for nostalgia purposes.
Yeah, yesteryear technology of what?
Yeah, it's like, this is how improvement works. We take the old design, we scrap it, and we come up with a better design.
If you want the old design, then have the old bike.
The old bike still exists. Go buy it used. Go buy it secondhand. But they shouldn't keep producing the same machine over and over for years. That's not good. Like, they need to advance. They need to keep driving.
It's not progress. And there's a lot of other sections where it's just not even possible to do that. Like with a frame, like there's no rules or regulations surrounding like a frame or anything per se. But like the engines,
Yeah,
they cannot make them the way they used to make them.
Yeah, they have ongoing emissions standards that they have to constantly have to qualify for and comply with. So they have to develop technology for that. But our buddy, and give him a shout out, our buddy Chris, he's ridden modern bikes. Like, it's not like he hasn't ridden them, but he never really gave them too much thought because that wasn't his bike. So he'd get to ride it and he'd be like, oh, that bike's cool. But he never really got to ride it hard and got to really
call it his. Yeah. Really be able to push the limits and really be like, okay, this is mine. I'm going to learn how this thing functions,
And now that I think he has opportunity to do that, he's really growing an appreciation for how much better the bikes have gone, and he's going in. It's such a leap, I don't remember what year his R6 was.
He said it was 2004.
Yeah, I was gonna say it had to be around in 04 because it was fuel injected.
Yep.
Which that was when he looked for the R6. I asked him today, and he said he specifically sought out, at the time of him purchasing that motorcycle, he sought out a fuel injected bike because he didn't want to deal with carburetors. Which I think is wise for anybody that's, especially new riders to motorcycles. Buy a fuel injected bike. They're much more reliable and they're
if it has one carburetor, I can be like, yeah, that's probably all right. You can manage one carburetor.
I don't know, on a street bike, the carburetors are so.
Well, you never get one carburetor with a street bike anymore because very few street bikes are single cylinder, and if they are, I don't know of any modern street bike that's carbureted that has enough power to really do anything that's a single cylinder.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some dual sport somewhere that is probably, but for the vast majority of people, if you're getting a carbureted bike, which I don't even know what is really available carbureted anymore.
There's still a few. Yamaha still sells a V-Star 250, and I think it's carbureted. It's a street bike. It's a little cruiser, a little starter cruiser, and I think it's carbureted.
Is it a V-twin?
Yeah.
With a single carb, or is it dual?
I don't know.
It's probably dual. At least
I don't.
in my experience.
I don't think it is. I think it's single carb.
Yeah.
But anywho,
people can manage a single though. People that are slightly mechanically inclined, because it's just take it apart, clean it, put it back together. Trying to synchronize carburetors, that's a whole nother layer of complexity that just goes out of way above people's heads. There's special tools involved in that typically.
So going to the core of the premise is like modern bikes are better. Just flat out. You talked about frame and the frame differences and the ongoing development in that. But if you put a carbureted motor into one of these miracle frames, it would still be a pile of junk. Like,
oh yeah,
I wouldn't want anything to do with it. If you used a motor from 20 years ago, it would be a pile of junk, and I wouldn't want anything to do with it. There's very few motors that even like stick out as something I would want, and it has less to do with how the motor makes power and all that kind of stuff, and more to do with, do you know how much those old motors weigh? They weigh a ton. Motors have lost so much weight. It's ridiculous. So if you put one of those old motors into these miraculous new frames, it just ruins all the development that you just did on that new frame to get it light and to get it strong and do all these things. To put a turd old motor in that weighs 1,000,000 pounds. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
It's funny that so frames have went kind of full circle on steel and into aluminum, then kind of back out of aluminum. Motors have kind of just went heavy all in on aluminum. They used to have some iron block stuff and things like that, some steel heads, from really, really long time ago. Very quickly, it all went aluminum because it had to for lightness and for ease of manufacturing.
The material works well in that standpoint.
Works well for an engine. It doesn't work well for a frame.
The reason that aluminum's hard to work with for a frame is, one, aluminum fatigues more than steel does. Steel has it's
a high Young's Modus model. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, there's some basically it's more elastic.
Yeah.
Than aluminum is.
It can bend, and then you can deflect it, and it will return to its shape better for longer than aluminum.
And you can repeat that several times more than you can on aluminum. So that's one of the benefits. And what a lot of folks don't realize about how a motorcycle functions is, when the motorcycle is standing upright, the suspension works through its throw as you would think. But the second you turn the motor or the motorcycle over on its side, like when you're at a really steep lean angle going through a corner really fast, that suspension is no longer active as suspension. If the ground is flat, if you're on completely flat ground, and if you're all the way cranked over at lean angle to where you're dragging your knee on the ground, and there's a speed bump in the road, when you hit that speed bump, basically your front tire won't deflect upwards into its suspension stroke. It'll deflect sideways. And want to lift up into the air as it's trying to get up and over that speed bump. The problem with that is there is no suspension to allow that movement. So the suspension in that instant is the frame of the motorcycle, the fork of the motorcycle, the wheel of the motorcycle, things that aren't necessarily shouldn't be bending, but because of the nature of a motorcycle, they do bend. And that's where these materials, these modern materials, have gotten so much better. And also the engineered in flexibility, that's mega. That's huge. That's why bikes from the 80s just feel so wallowy and crappy. And you get modern bikes and they're just so poised and good at doing that sort of stuff.
They've gotten really good at dialing in the amount of flex they want out of it.
And the bike's character changes completely based on its flexibility.
Yep.
If you look at what race teams do when they grab one of these super bikes, one of the places they spend a lot of money is the rear swing arm.
Yep.
They spend so much money. Like a DevTech rear swing arm is, for my Supermoto, you can buy a DevTech for about $5,000. But I've always heard the World Superbike spec rear swing arms, whether they're DevTech or Suter, there's a few brands that really work on these things. They're upwards of $20,000 for the swing arm because of how much engineering goes into it to make it flexible where they need it to be flexible and not flexible where they need it to not be flexible.
Yep. All the while being lighter.
Oh yeah, being lighter than its counterpart.
That's unsprung weight.
Yeah. So that's an area just as simple as the frame of the motorcycle, which is a non-moving part typically.
Yep.
And
it's a part you don't even think about when you're looking at a motorcycle. The last thing you're looking at is like, oh, how's the frame designed? What's it made out of? Nobody asks those questions.
And that is like so much better than what they were even just 20 years ago.
Well, and think of like how many like 80s, and so in 90s we were kind of getting around to what we're doing now, but 80s and beyond, like having a cracked or fatigued frame wasn't unheard of. It was kind of like, you know, what's the condition of the bike? Oh, it's got a boatload of miles on it. Well, is the frame wore out on the thing? That was kind of a problem back then. You don't ever hear about that now.
And the only people I ever hear that from is you will see fatigued out frames in racing.
That's racing.
But
you see all kinds of stuff in racing that nobody on the rest
exactly.
of the planet sees.
They're gonna experience problems that normal world people don't experience. And they count hours on the frame because they're going to fatigue out, and they're also looking for 100% performance because 98% performance is losing races.
Yep.
So they need 100% performance. So I understand that part of it too. So the one of the big things I was thinking about here is we'd mentioned carburetors before, and you know, I see all the time more in the dual sport adventure world. I'll see guys like talk about, well, I just want the reliability and easy to work on so I can fix it on the side of the road and blah, 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 all these normal type of things that they say. And for a lot of those folks, I'm always like, yeah, because, you know, a Kawasaki KLR 650s never broke ever.
Yeah.
Is that why they have invented all these different parts to fix all the issues that they have? Like, no, they have tons of issues and they break all the damn time. And a carburetor will break if you literally let it sit for 3 months. Like if it's wintertime and you're not riding because it's wintertime, like a lot of folks do, if you don't treat the carburetor correctly, you don't do what you're supposed to do. You have to be very proactive about this. You can't be reactive. You got to be proactive.
You don't even have to. You don't need. It's not even that complicated. It's, do you know the proper starting procedure?
Yeah.
Because if it's cold out and you don't know the proper starting procedure, which by the way can be more complicated than what the manual says. Sometimes, like, you have to learn how your bike likes to operate.
You have to learn it on your individual machine.
Yes, your very specific machine,
two
how it
KLR
likes to work.
650s may not work exactly the same.
Nope. And so it's like you have to know how much choke to give it for what conditions are. You got to kind of guess. You just have to know.
But two 2012 Gixxer 650s or 750s will act the same as each other. Like it's really easy. And if you rode those two Gixxers back to back, even if they were brand new off the showroom, they might actually ride slightly different because suspension settings might be slightly different or whatever.
Yeah, that's
but like,
manufacturing tolerances, and that's the stack up of kind of just everything culminating into a device.
But like two carbureted bikes, this one might need you to, like, you know, turn the gas on and off, honk the horn 3 times, roll it backwards, roll it forwards. You know, put your right leg in, put your right leg out.
Yeah,
like,
does it want choke for 12 seconds before you take the choke off when it's 15 degrees outside, or does it want 35 seconds of choke? Or
it's such a ridiculous thing.
How many times do you need to blip the throttle to keep it running because it doesn't idle when it's on choke?
And God forbid you have to go up a hill and get into altitude.
Oh
'Cause
yeah, no,
that just
then
changes
forget
everything.
about
That's
it.
all out the window.
Yeah,
Or you change climates. Climates will technically, if you ride a carbureted bike year round, you're supposed to rejet for winter.
yeah.
Like it's just absurd. Like
In the manuals of all of those carbureted bikes of the day, they had an entire section dedicated to what altitudes are you running. Typically, here's the jetting that you need to apply. If you're running under these temperature conditions, here's the different stuff you need. And like oil,
Oh, yeah.
is a thing too, which really isn't a thing anymore because it's
No.
kind of like for 98% of us, we run, what is it? I think it's a
1040.
1040
Yeah,
is
1040.
like the wide range one on they give you a chart with 1040 and then there's this narrow band with 1030 that gives you a little bit more cold
Like,
performance.
1040
operating
covers
a
pretty
bike
much
at
everything.
negative 5 degrees? Nobody.
So it's like modern stuff's just gotten way, way easier to live with. It works like you think it will. And then when you get onto all these bikes having all these fancy features, like modern bikes having fancy features, whether it's traction control, ABS, lean sensing, wheelie control, cruise control,
Yep. Heated grips, heated seats,
electronic suspension, like all of these sort of things. And I'll fully admit there are some things on that list that I just made that aren't they aren't the first feature I would go for. And some of them are features that I actually don't care for. Like the electronic suspension thing depends on the bike. If it's like a sport tour bike or an adventure bike that I'm going to basically sport tour with, then I don't mind the electronic suspension. I won't go out of my way to get a bike that has it, but like I don't mind it, and if the bike has it, I'll use it.
it's gotten exponentially better over the years.
It has.
And at some point in the very near future, I don't think we're very far off. Definitely within, I think 10 years, electronic suspension I think will supersede.
What I want to see them do
99% of the traditional
is
suspension
there's an
systems.
old suspension system Chevrolet developed. I'm pretty sure it was
MagnaRide.
Yeah, MagnaRide. And McLaren uses it currently. McLaren's really developed the MagnaRide, and McLaren, what they've done with it is apparently magic. Like it works really well on McLaren cars, but something I have no idea about because I can't afford $500,000 cars. So
Yeah, $3 million cars.
whatever the heck they are making, but the MagnaRide stuff, I was always thinking like, man, if we're doing all this suspension stuff that can make suspension adjustments a couple times a second, MagnaRide can do it way more than a couple times a second. It's thousands of times a second.
Well, I think the new stuff is, and by new I mean like the last 5, 6, 10 years of electronic suspension. I think it's like in the milliseconds.
Yep.
It's like it can do like
So
100, every, it can do one every like millisecond or two.
all they're doing is open and closing valving using solenoid. Like it's not some weird magic. It's either a solenoid or a stepper motor that they're driving a pintle into a valve to open and close the valve to allow more or less fluid flow.
So from the limited amount of research I've done, and all suspension systems may not be this way, I think this is just the ones that maybe I've seen. There's like a needle into a seat, and there's basically like a rapid fire solenoid kind of deal.
Yeah.
It works like an injector, like a fuel injector.
Just like a fuel injector.
Where it just fires that things 1,000,000 times a second or whatever,
to allow more and less
and
fuel
more
flow,
or less
just oil flow.
Just depending. Yeah, I think it basically works just like that.
MagnaRide, what it does is it actually has iron particulate in the oil. It's suspended in the oil.
Yep.
And they have magnets at either end of the shock absorber, and they actually change the viscosity of the oil based on the magnetism that they apply. And then they have fixed orifices for the fluid to flow through, so they know what the orifices are, how big the hole is in the orifice. And if they change the thickness of the oil, it'll flow more or less oil through that hole.
Yep.
And that's what makes it special. It also makes it to where there's like no moving parts that won't wear out. You just have
Yeah.
magnets that are on there, and you just crank the magnets up and down with electricity. And the oil itself, you could make it serviceable to where you have to like, spill the oil and
Yeah.
fill it with more oil. But like, that's it. There's no real moving parts to it. So it's a extremely robust system. So I like when people start talking about all this technology. It's like, well, one, the technology's been developed for so many years. It's pretty dialed at this point. And two, the technology doesn't rely on mechanical parts like traction control.
Yeah.
Doesn't rely on mechanical parts, so the failure rate is really low.
What's software?
It's
software
software-
utilizing what already exists.
And really, the only thing you have is for traction control. If it's an electronic throttle bike, they're going to use the electronic throttles to turn down the engine power, and then if you really tie the traction control in with the ABS system, you can actually clamp the brakes if the bike needs it. Some traction control systems do. And then if you add lean sensing, that just makes the traction control system smarter. Lean sensing doesn't really, it has a like small mechanical component. It has like yaw sensors and things to like know.
Yeah, the 6-axis. That's just it's accelerometers.
Yeah,
What
it's
it
just
is. They're solid state components.
Yeah.
There's no moving parts or anything. It's not like an old lean
Like a
system
mercury switch or
Where, well,
anything.
yeah, there was like a ball bearing in a tray.
Yeah.
And there were contacts, and based on how it leaned, the ball bearing would
roll to a certain
roll,
side.
and that would. No, they have
Yeah,
solid state electronic components that go into the boards, and then like there's no failure,
And-
virtually no failures.
The only thing you have to worry about, like wheel speed sensors, like I guess they
But
could
you
get,
already
they
have
could get
that.
damaged, but they've been around for 30 years and they're
Yeah.
solid.
When you already have that for the ABS system.
Yep.
So, and if it's good enough for a safety system, it's good enough for any other system to piggyback its
Then
signal.
when you talk about electronic throttles, those have been around. Yamaha put an electronic throttle on the R6 in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what do you guys talk about? Like all this newfangled technology. It's been around for 20 years on the R6.
Cars have had all that.
And cars have had electronic throttle for ever since the 90s.
Yeah. So it's really not new,
Not new at all, and it's so dialed in. Now I'll tell you, the electronic throttles, they aren't all made equal. Certain bikes, electronic throttles feel better than other bikes. But if you go back to cable throttles, certain cable throttles felt better than other cable throttles. And if you
I tell you, all cable throttles are terrible. After owning several motorcycles with electronic throttles, you get spoiled real quick.
the nice thing about electronic throttles is one, it's no maintenance. So with
Yep.
a cable, you're supposed to maintain it. It stretches, and you're supposed to adjust it. You're supposed to lube it, and it can get bound. And there's all kinds of things that can happen with a cable throttle. Where an electronic throttle, you just don't have that. The only thing that could technically wear out is just the grip. Like, I guess the throttle body could wear out, but you're talking. It's so rare. It's not common.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got the servo controlled throttle body, but typically you're going to have that anyways if you have traction control. That's kind of a part of, you don't have to have it for traction control, but
You're going to have a throttle body. If you have cables or not, you're going to have a
Yeah.
throttle body. Like a throttle body's there, and it's
and you're going to have a throttle position sensor. So the sensor's already going to be there to
already
tell
there.
you where you are. So the only thing you're adding is you're adding the motor.
and you're adding the accelerator sensor, so the sensor that's on your throttle hand.
Yeah.
That you're adding that sensor. Now, where electronic throttle can also feel different is not only in the software and the programming, like maybe they just didn't get the programming just right to make the throttle feel like it's one-to-one connected. And I've ridden bikes like that like when you apply throttle, it just like has delay. It doesn't do exactly what you're inputting, or maybe you're cranking like say 80% throttle and it's only giving you 40-50% throttle, and you know there's more on the table, so you squeeze more and you go all the way up to 100%. All of a sudden the throttle just unloads on you and gives you all of it when you didn't necessarily, you only really wanted 70 or 80%. So I've had bikes that have done that sort of thing, but I think that's more of a thing of the past.
Yeah.
Also, what I've noticed is like throttle return springs that are built into electronic throttles. Those are also not all made the same. Like if you ride like the Indian motorcycles, some of them are kind of sloppy on your right hand, and they don't feel. It feels very artificial or vague, and I think that's where people can get like defensive about wanting an old school throttle rather than an electronic throttle. And
That's a problem of poor implementation.
and that's a problem from that manufacturer.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you go to like my Super Duke's throttle is perfection. It is just really, really good. It acts like it's perfect 1-to-1 connection. You'd have no idea that it's electronic. It really wouldn't.
No, you forget about it when
it's
you're
just
riding the
perfect.
bike and
And
you go and get on the throttle. It's perfect.
The third
every
throttle
time.
return spring feels great, so it gives you like real feedback on your hand, and then there's no slop to it either. It's nice and crisp. It's just a really great throttle. I'll tell you that the 890 that I just bought, the SMT, its throttle can be a little vague, but I knew that the software on the 890 wasn't quite as dialed as the 1290, to where like I do get a bit of vagueness, and when I roll out of corners, like I'll start rolling into the throttle and not get the desired engine power I'm after, so I'll roll further, then all of a sudden the engine just comes on, and I'm like, whoa, hold on.
Could that be the traction control
It's not traction control. It is the throttle, because I can feel the throttle opening. I'm not getting a shut down. I'm getting a pour on, and it's doing it when I'm not necessarily telling it to, or there's like a lag to it. So you have to kind of learn to ride around it. But you're talking milliseconds here. You're not talking like seconds.
It's a very, very tiny amount.
It's just a very tiny delay, and it's almost like you're second guessing yourself. Like, was that really a did I really feel a delay, or was that really a problem, or maybe I just didn't input the throttle correctly or something. So you're always kind of second guessing yourself. But on a really good electronic throttle, like my 1290s, it's just like there's no second guessing. It's just perfection. Yep. If you made a mistake, you made the mistake.
Yep.
And on cable throttle, I've had plenty of cable throttles that feel like crap. You know, that SV650 that's out there, its cable throttle is kind of meh. And that's one of the things I've fought on when people talk about modern bikes versus yesterday's bikes, and when they're trying to defend yesterday's bikes by saying, electronic throttles are like, no, electronic throttles are awesome. Like they work really well, and they enable the manufacturer to do all sorts of cool things, like give you cruise control and all kinds of crazy
ride
stuff.
modes. You get different throttle mappings. You can get different throttle curves for whatever you want. You can customize a lot of that stuff now on the bikes.
I mean, technically, with a electronic throttle, if they really wanted to, they could produce one engine. They could produce one engine that made 200 horsepower, and then they could put an electronic throttle on the bike, and they can make that 200 horsepower engine limited to 10 horsepower if they wanted to. And then they could open it all the way up to 200, and they could do everything in between and completely limit you if they wanted to. So the reason that makes it good is, could you imagine if you bought your first bike, it was an entry-level bike, you paid whatever you paid for it, and then after you got better at riding, instead of having to sell the bike and then go buy a new bike and do all that, you just walked into the dealership, paid them whatever the money was, and they unlocked the next part of your bike. And people might say, well,
you do like KTMs, don't you?
Yeah. And people would be like, oh, well, that's stupid. The bike's already equipped. Well, 200 horsepower bikes are 20 grand, and you just paid $5,000 for this thing. So it only gets $5,000 worth of horsepower.
Yep.
And until you pay the full 20 grand, you don't get the 200 horse. And
can you
so
get a layaway payment plan? Can you make a week's payment? Get like an extra 2 horsepower every week?
But I don't know. Like, and I'm not saying this is a good business. I'm really not saying this is a business. But effectively,
it's possible.
It's possible.
It is possible.
And you don't have to live up to to that ridiculous of a level. But
Well, and that
you could.
might not be. I don't know exactly how it works overseas with
That's how they're doing
like
it with,
the A1, A2
that is
licensing
how they're doing
and
it with
stuff.
the A2 stuff.
Well, I know they have like bikes that you buy that are limited.
So they've a
But
couple different ways of
are they
limiting them.
doing it software wise where you can turn them up afterwards?
Yes, on the
I
electronic
know there
throttle.
were some restrictor plate kind of
Yeah, they had
weird
restrictor
goofy
plates.
deals going with some bikes.
Like I remember the Kawasaki Versus 650 just because I owned one, so I was part of some of the Facebook groups. Some of the guys on the Facebook group would talk about the restrictor plate because the restrictor plate was installed in theirs to comply with their A2 license to get the bike under like 45 horsepower or whatever the A2 license requires. So they ran the restrictor plate, and then when they were through their A2 license period, they could have the restrictor plate removed and access all 65 horsepower. Well, if it's an electronic throttle bike, what they've been doing over there is they have an A2 electronic throttle limitation, and that the bike comes in or the dealer can activate, and then the bike gets purchased, it passes its inspection because it has the A2 limitation, and then that person goes through the A2 period, which is like whatever they have to ride for like a year or whatever, however length of time it is. And then when it's time for them to go to their next level of licensing, they don't have to buy a new bike. They can just go to the dealer and have them software flash it. Boom. Now they have access to the whole bike.
Yeah.
And they don't have to buy another bike or nothing like that. So make fun of KTM all you want, but that is already being employed over in other countries.
I think that can be smart for them. That way the person only has to buy one bike.
That's what I'm getting at. You don't have to buy one bike, and the bike can just keep growing with you.
Yeah.
And I mean, my 200 horsepower example is way, way extreme. You know, just me being absurd here. You know, but if you think about it, it's possible all through having one bike, and you wouldn't have to do anything else.
Yeah.
And if you think about it too, it'd be possible on electric bikes if they ever become a thing. So, you know, there's just all kinds of good that you could draw out of this.
I don't want to give the insurance companies any ideas, but they can speed limit the bikes too with software as well.
You could, but like then you're getting into the whole like, you know, nanny state. Does the government really?
No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and like,
but I'm just saying that it's possible.
This is America. If you're an 18-year-old and you want a Busa, go sign on that dotted line, man.
They're putting pit speed buttons on bikes now. That's pretty cool.
Well, for Europe, it's about necessary, dude. Like riding through Europe was a nightmare. And I don't know the kilometer an hour conversion because, you know, I come from the country that landed on the moon. So when I was riding through France, I was going about whatever the kilometer an hour rate was. I was going about 55, and it would just the speed limit would just randomly shut off and be 20 miles an hour. And then it would just randomly turn back on to 55, even though there were no crossroads. I wasn't going through a town.
Yep.
There'd just be this random section of this random road that would just turn into 20 mile an hour. And I ended up getting a speeding ticket because one of the speed cameras caught me when I was slowing down coming through one of those things. And I was trying to comply. It just snuck up on me. And
You didn't slow down soon enough.
yeah, I didn't slow down soon enough.
should have known.
So the camera got me.
Not knowing's not an excuse.
And it got me for like 6 mile an hour over or something just ridiculous. Like no police officer would actually give me a ticket for it, but the dang camera did.
Yep.
And in those instances, like if you knew that there was a speed trap area like that, you could just knock on your speed limiter button and it would tone you down to whatever you set it at. Like those were like 20 mile an hour zones. So you could set it to 20, hit your speed limiter button, and then the bike will only go 20.
Well, if you wanted to get extra hardcore about it, the bikes, you could put GPS on it.
It would know.
And it would know the speed limits, and it would force it to only go the speed
Again,
limit.
you're getting into some like stuff that I'm like, nah.
Absolutely. But it's possible. The technology exists.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible.
We can build it.
But when you hear arguments against technology, and when you hear them arguing because of reliability issues, when have you ever seen a 70s motorcycle be more reliable than a 2000s motorcycle?
They're more reliable at holding stuff up, being a table.
Like a 70s bike, if you could get Honda to make you a CB750, brand new as they were way back when, there's no way it's as reliable as one of these new bikes. And I know there's examples. I know there's examples of some dude that had like 100,000 miles on a CB750, but that wasn't the norm. The norm is get on Craigslist and count how many of them you find as basket cases in people's garages.
All of them.
Like all of them, because and why did they all get parked and shut down? Usually what happens is they sat for a period of time, the carburetors went to crap, everything made out of rubber on the thing dry rotted and is gone. And then because moisture was able to creep in, everything's rusted out in them, and now they're worthless piles of crap that you can't even pay to get rid of.
Yep.
You just don't see that as often on the modern stuff.
A great extreme example of this is one of Zach's Daily Riders, the 100th episode, where he did the old school Harley Davidson that's 100 years old
That's
or
like
whatever.
hard to ride.
Yeah, super hard to ride. And I can't say I've rode anything that old, but I've drove and rode and built some pretty old classic stuff. And it is very finicky. All of it is. Like there's 15,000 buttons and all these things, and it's everybody's like, well, why doesn't it just do the thing? Like, because they didn't invent that yet. Like, yeah, you got to manually change the timing because they didn't invent the centrifugal timing system yet. Like, but you want to say, oh, technology. It's like, well, but all of the things we take for granted now was technology compared to that, and so, like, you can't argue that, like, oh, well, that bike's more reliable. You really want to tell me a 100-year-old Harley's more reliable than, I don't know, whatever, a 1998 Gixxer or something?
And you can also, like, for the most parts, the resale value tells you the story. How much are, we're recording this in 2025, and in April of 2025, a 2007 Gixxer 750 is going for like $6,000 or $7,000 right now, which is no joke, not far off of what they were new back then.
That's ludicrous.
And
they're still worth that.
You can't give away a 1986, whatever UJM.
Yep.
You can't give them away because no one freaking wants them things. Even if it's in running condition, it's only worth a little bit.
Well, very few people know how to work on them anymore, too. That's half the problem, too.
Any
shops won't work on them
shops
anymore
refuse.
either.
Yeah, they just straight up refuse to work on them. Because as someone who works at a shop, there's a huge waste of time and waste of money for the shop. Yeah. If a guy brings in a 40-year-old motorcycle, if that's the kind of bike he has, that he's only had the ability to spend $200, $500, $800 on a bike, how much money does he have to fix it? Not enough. Yep. Because for a professional shop to look at a bike like that, like I used to always tell them when they would bring me stuff like that, right off the rip, I'd tell them they have to bring $1,000 up front, because it's going to cost me. I used to charge $100 per carburetor, and they have 4 carburetors. It's going to need all the intake boots.
Yep.
It's going to need every piece of rubber on the bike. It's going to need new chain, new tires. I'm going to have to clean the tank. I'm going to have to reline the tank because it's rusted out. Like, when you're a professional and you're charging $100+ an hour, it's pretty easy to spend 8 hours on the bike plus parts.
Yep.
On a bike that old, and that's $1,000 right off the rip. So I used to always tell them, bring the bike and bring $1,000. And if they didn't like that, if they didn't like hearing that, well, then, okay, that's understandable.
Yep.
It's a professional shop. I'm not going to tie my time up to work on your pile of junk for nothing. when I can go work on some modern bikes and actually make money and turn money. So that's it's just not good for business to work on that old stuff. So finding people to work on it's very difficult. Basically old stuff like that it's a labor of love. It's if you're passionate about that particular thing, cool. I'm not hating on you for that. And I think some of the old bikes out there can be really, really cool because of like I appreciate the engineering that went into them, considering the time periods that they were made in. They were pioneers for their times because they were inventing new technology during those times. And you can appreciate that. It's really cool.
But that doesn't make it better.
But you're not going to rely on it.
No.
Like it's just asinine to sit there and act like you're going to rely on. I'll tell you what, who's a great example of the dual sport and adventure thing. Because I hear it all the time about adventure bikes. Well, I'm going to be riding this bike out in the middle of Africa. I want it to be, I can fix it with a stick and a rock, you know? Itchy Boots, huge YouTube channel. She has done several bikes and she's ridden all over the world for like over a decade. She's extremely experienced in riding or travel adventure stuff. Well, I don't remember what it was, if it was for the 24/25 season, but it was her most recent season. She had this bike built, and she usually does like a big like unveiling of her new bike and stuff. And her new bike for the past few has been a modern Honda CRF 300L Rally. That's been the bike of choice for her a few times. She also has chosen the Royal Enfield Himalayan a few times in the past. And she partnered with Royal Enfield for a bit. But that Honda she had chosen, which is a great machine. It's really, really good. And then she'd done up one of the Hondas, and she'd done a bunch of modifications to it. I know she had some trouble out of the Hondas before, like she had like a suspension failure. But stuff happens when you're riding a bike out in harsh environments. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
And with the whole, or I shouldn't say the whole, a lot of the internet advocates for like these carbureted old school bikes that you can fix with a rock and a stick anywhere. So she built this. I don't remember what year it was, but it was an '80s Yamaha, and I believe it was like I believe hers is a single cylinder, and it's kind of like it's done up to look like one of the old Tannerays from the '80s. It's meant to look like a rally bike or like an adventure bike from the '80s, and it is from the '80s. And they went through and they didn't just like put a few new parts on the bike. They didn't just completely rebuild the bike. They tried to modernize the bike with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Better suspension and all this other stuff. And for some reason, I want to say they did something like it was kickstart, and then they added electric start or something to it. I don't remember. But they're modernizing this thing as best they could. And she had like end her season early because the thing was just so unreliable. It just had problem after problem. She couldn't live with it. It's like you have to be a qualified mechanic to operate a machine like that, because it's like, even like you were going back to what you were saying, just starting the thing is like, it's a task and you have to know it, especially if it's kickstart. Like it's like you really got to be familiar with the thing, and you have to be very open-minded and flexible, because like every time you go to start it, it's not going to be the same. So you have to like, be flexible in how you're approaching it.
Well, and all this technology lowers the barrier to entry for people too. Because like my wife, for example, she cannot kickstart a bike to save her life.
Yeah.
I tried to get her to learn how to kickstart a bike. She can't do it. She just doesn't have the strength. I think she does have the strength. She doesn't understand the technique.
Yeah, it's a technique issue
on how to kick it. And so we got her an electric start dirt bike. And so now she can ride a dirt bike on her own without me needing to kick it all the time for her, because Shouldn't have to. It's electric now. And I don't know of anybody that's ever said kickstarting's better than electric
Dude,
start.
I get it all the time selling dirt bikes.
They are full of shit, and they've never. They're just mad because they don't own one. That's all.
They'll walk down the rows and they'll be like, "What happened to the Kickstarter?" And I'm like, "Oh, that was dead weight, so they just went ahead and eliminated it." And they look at me like, "What?" Like, well, what if the electric starter goes out on you when you're in the middle of the woods? You can't kickstart it.
Roll started it.
And I just look at them and I go, yeah, I guess you just get out the Kickstarter on your truck whenever the battery dies, right? Yeah. Like, it doesn't happen, dude. Like, it's been so dialed for so long that it's not even a concern. I don't have a Kickstarter on my street bike, and street bikes haven't had Kickstarters really in mass in 30 some years. Mm-hmm. It's not a problem. No one even thinks about it.
You sit on the side of a hill, kickstarting the crap out of your bike for 20 minutes trying to unflood it, and tell me you didn't wish that you had an electric start in that moment.
It like
you are cussing up a storm trying to kickstart
dirt bikes. They're so reliable now. The only time you'll ever get a problem is literally if your battery takes a dump, which, I mean, it happens. Batteries go bad. But you should know that before you even take it on the trip with you. You should try starting it back at your house to determine if the battery's bad before you even load the bike onto the truck.
Well, and if your battery's bad, the thing's not going to run very well anyways. Like, you're going to have other problems.
And you can jump start the thing off of a little jump pack or off of another motorcycle.
Dirt bikes are so easy to roll start.
And that's the other thing is you can roll start it. Like, there's all kinds of different ways. And yeah, I know having a Kickstarter in that situation, you could be like, well, I have a backup Kickstarter.
Yeah, but that's what? The one tiny outlier that realistically should never happen and is totally avoidable.
It's a tiny outlier, and it's so moot and it's so underutilized that it's not just KTM that eliminated Kickstarters. Everybody did,
yeah.
Except Suzuki. Suzuki's the only one with Kickstarters left. Everybody else
they refuse to redesign anything.
Yeah, and that's the thing is they just don't want to redesign their engine cases. But everybody else is like, yeah, not only did we add electric start, we removed the Kickstarter completely, and there's not even a boss on the engine to add a Kickstarter to it. Like they eliminated the boss off the engine case and everything. Mm-hmm. So there's just no adding a kickstart to any of these bikes anymore. And I still get people complain about it, and I'm like, you know, they removed hand crank starting off of cars like 100 years ago. What have we done? Oh my God! What if the battery dies on your car? You just jump start it, man. It's not that big of a deal. It's absurd things like that I'm like, why are you holding on to it? Like, Kickstarters suck, dude. Like, they're not fun.
Yeah. Anybody that's ever sat on the side of a hill and kickstarted a bike for 20 minutes until they about passed out.
There's only like one time a Kickstarter's cool, and that's when you're down at bike night and you have your like 70-year-old motorcycle
that's parts together from some weird random and whatever stuff.
You put on your James Dean jacket and like roll over, and it's not even a Kickstarter that you throw your leg over the bike and stand over the bike and then kickstart. No, you step off to the side of the bike because you just want to look cool, and you jump on it and stuff, and everybody looks at you and you're like, yeah, I know how to do this. So that's the only time Kickstarting's cool. And even then, if you've ever seen that guy do that, because they're proud as hell of that moment, right?
Oh yeah.
You ever seen him try to do it and it doesn't start? And now they flooded the motor, and now they're kicking it like 100 times to try to get it going.
Usually that's what happens the first time.
Everybody at bike night is just like, when's it going to start?
Yeah.
Because the guy's just over there pedaling on the thing. It's hilarious.
There was Bikes and Beards. I think he did 2 videos on it, actually, maybe. I'm not sure. I think maybe there was a small segment in one, and then he did like a whole video on its own just recently. But it was like he'd give you $1,000 if you could start the bike.
Oh yeah,
that's all it was. If you could figure out how to start the bike, you can get $1,000.
Dude, I used to do. I mean, I wasn't going to offer somebody $1,000, but I used to tell all kinds of people, like, they'd ask me if they could ride my old race supermoto. I had my Suzuki 450, this pure race bike. It was like high compression, big cam. Like it was pretty nasty machine. Obviously, I could start it. Eric Schmidt got her started, but he didn't like. It wasn't like a one kick kind of deal.
Yeah.
Like it.
There was a process. There was a procedure.
It took him a few tries, and I helped him walk through it. But I always used to tell everybody, just joking around, because I had a lot of money in the bike and everything, and it was my race bike. I wasn't afraid of people crashing it, but I also didn't want it hurt. But I'd always joke around, and be like, hey, if you can start it, you can ride it.
Yep.
And no one could start it. Like I knew they couldn't start it.
Yeah.
So if somebody legitimately wanted to ride it, and I legitimately wanted to allow them to ride it, I would start it for them.
Yep.
And that was the only way they could do it. And if they stalled it, like out on the racetrack, if they stalled it, I had to run out there because they couldn't pick the bike up and like start it again. Like they either had to walk it in or whatever.
Yep.
So I'd go running out there and start it up for them so they can continue riding it because it was that hard to start.
Yep. My CRF 150R, my dirt bike that I had, it was finicky like that. It was extra finicky. Like you had to kick it and you had to choke it and get it all set up and then get it running, and then you had to let it idle for a certain period of time, and then based on the way the engine was running is when you knew that you could turn the choke off. But then it wouldn't idle as soon as you turned the choke off, so you had to hold it above idle until it warmed up to a period at which it would run on, then it would idle. Like it was so finicky. It had a hot start lever for when normally the choke adds fuel. The hot start level added air. So it was the opposite of a choke. You don't even see that on bikes at all. But for whatever reason, they felt they needed that on this thing. And I did have to use that quite a few times. You'd get the bike nice and hot back in the woods or something, and we'd stall the thing. I'd stall it or whatever, and I'd be kicking the crap out of it. And you'd have to pull the hot start lever to get it to start. But you had to know when to pull it. Because if you pulled it any other time, it wouldn't run.
Yep.
It was only under certain circumstances when you needed to pull that lever. But nobody needs that stuff on bikes anymore. Fuel injected stuff, not a problem. You hit the button and it goes every single time.
And we'll circle back to traction control. I've heard people make complaints about traction control. Now, traction control is a subject that I can see some legitimate reason and logic going against traction control, and
again, it's a product of proper implementation.
And where I can see people being like, hey, look, I don't want to pay for traction. I don't want to pay for the development of the traction control system. I just want a lower price bike, because a KTM 390 or equivalent of a Yamaha R3 or a whatever Kawasaki Ninja 500. I mean, insert whatever beginner bike you want. They're 40 horsepower. They don't need traction control. It's baked into it being 40 horsepower.
Yeah.
Like it's just not going to spool up. Like say if a Royal Enfield Meteor 350 that makes 24 horsepower had a traction control system, I'd be like, nah, just give me a cheaper priced bike.
Yep.
Because it doesn't make enough horsepower to matter for traction control.
Yeah.
I completely understand the logic behind that. But once you start achieving over 100 horsepower, and especially when you start achieving over 150 horsepower, traction control just makes all the sense, and it works really, really well, and it's gotten so good.
I think even less than that, I think it makes sense. I think at like 80 horsepower or so, 60 to 80 horsepower, it even makes sense. Not necessarily for all the time, every day, dry weather stuff, but wet weather.
Wet weather and inclement road conditions, like a gravel patch or any of that kind of stuff, it's going to keep you from spooling up the rear wheel.
A place where it's not a problem of power, it's a problem of traction.
Yeah, and those kind of, and that's the flip side of the argument. That's the total flip side of the argument. It's a safety system not based on perfect conditions. It's based on imperfect conditions, low traction conditions that you weren't prepared for, but that you find yourself in. And for new riders, I can understand the logic that way. Playing devil's advocate between the two, I don't know which way is better. So for advanced riders, I can say I can understand them being like, no, I don't want traction control. if you're an advanced rider. But for a beginner rider, one, they wouldn't know any better. But two, I could see the manufacturer saying like, hey, look, for a beginner rider, it's better if we install traction control on this bike in case they run across gravel, in case they go through the wet, just day-to-day stuff you deal with riding a motorcycle to and from wherever.
It makes it safer.
Yeah, it just makes it a safer ride. And you're doing it with components that are pre-existing on the motorcycle. You're just adding a little bit of software. So you're not complicating the mechanicals. You're not making the bike less reliable. You're literally just using components that are already existing.
And some of the budget systems can be a bit basic and a bit intrusive to certain riders.
Absolutely.
But, if you pay more money, you can get a better system on, you buy a more expensive bike with a better system on it. And, to take that to an extreme, race bikes that are out there doing ridiculous stuff, they've got those systems.
Yep.
So
that's where the systems were initially
developed. Where they were developed. So, I mean, you can't say that, I kind of think the argument is silly when people say, oh, well, I'm a better rider, I don't need traction control, or the traction control is getting in my way. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe the specific system that you have, that you own, is below your riding level. I think you can turn all of them off as far as I'm aware.
Oh yeah,
pretty much all of them are turn offable. But
even if you don't have a button to turn it off, you can always just pull the wheel speed sensor, whatever, and
pull the fuse or whatever, and quit it and make it stop. But you are not better than the best traction control system out there.
And the best riders in the world run a traction control system.
And it makes them a better rider.
Yeah, it makes them a better rider. So it's just enhancing things. These rider aids are just enhancing everything.
Yep.
And, once we get into... So the bikes are lighter. The bikes make more power.
Yep.
The bikes are more reliable. The bikes are safer. And
you have radar, emergency braking, and cruise control now.
I understand from a safety aspect, but I don't know if I would like having it on the bike or not. If it operated in the background and I didn't know it was there, which a lot of these systems do, like ABS, traction control, they operate in the background and you wouldn't know it was there. So if it's like that, fine, as long as it's not getting in my way, whatever. If that's what the bike comes with, but I'm not going to seek out a bike that has that. No. Like that's not like highest thing on my list of aspects of the bike I'm interested in.
And that's still a very, very new system, and I still have reservations in those kinds of systems. Some cars have had some problems with those.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
So
that's what I'm saying. If it worked in the background,
but it's still developing,
I wouldn't trust it. I would pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And if it happened to save me one time, I would be like, that was weird and cool, and I appreciate that. But I'm still not going to lean on the system.
No, you don't want to rely on it. But if it catches you in the emergency, then it makes it worth it. Even whatever you had to pay an extra $1,500 for it or whatever, to buy the bike with that system on it. If it saves you a crash, that was probably worth it.
Now, to be fair to the other side of the argument, is there some technology on bikes that you think has gone too far or that you think that is not valuable?
I think it depends on what your purpose is for the bike. I think sometimes that matters. If it's a bike if it's just your going to town bike, you're just going to hit the bar up, or you're going to, whatever. Yeah. Radar cruise control probably is silly. If it's just, something if it's a scooter or something and you're cruising down to the Comet or whatever, yeah. Do you need ABS? Do you need traction control? Do you need any of that stuff? Probably not. But it's all about its purpose and what you decide to use it for. If you're going out to go ride aggressively, to ride fast, you ride twisty roads, traction control, ABS, you probably want that for what you're doing. That would you would benefit very greatly from those features. Radar cruise control, probably not so much. If you're doing a lot of highway riding, a lot of miles crushing, you're touring, you're doing, big, huge days on your big, giant Goldwing or whatever. Yeah, maybe radar cruise control would be very important to you. That would help reduce a lot of fatigue.
And I think, if we were to categorize, all these new modern features, like I could have a category of safety, and I would put like ABS and traction control in the safety column.
Yep.
Convenience, and I'd put like cruise control and hell, I'd even like
Quick shifter, that's a convenience.
quick shifter is a convenience. It's really fun. Hell, I'd even consider fuel injection in that category, in the convenience category.
I could see it
But
being a
also
safety thing too, though.
But also a reliability
Because it
thing,
won't quit on
know?
you at lights and stuff, It's always there when you hit the throttle.
But there is one thing that is modern and new, and I wish all the manufacturers would just go figure out something else. And that's key fobs.
I knew that was going to come up at some
God, I
point.
hate key fobs. Like when you ride a sport bike, there's nowhere to put the damn thing. You usually don't have pockets on. Even if I do have pockets, I don't want anything in my pockets. Even if I'm wearing jeans, I don't want the key fob in the front pocket of my jean poking out, poking my leg.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't want it. Like, it's not convenient. It's not comfortable. And my race leathers don't have they have the Napoleon pocket, but I hate putting the key fob in the Napoleon pocket because I wear a chest protector underneath that. And then the key's just constantly poking me and everything.
Yep.
Can't stand it. Why in the world did they put a key fob on a sport bike?
I think a key fob makes sense on a touring bike.
On a touring bike, like my
A big Goldwing,
Super
a big
Adventure?
BMW GS, the Super Adventure.
it had it, and while it still wasn't my preferred method, it wasn't as bad on the Super Adventure. I just kept the key fob in the tank bag like all the time.
Yeah.
So
Like
But
that
even
wouldn't it wouldn't bother me at all. I would not like
I was
it.
not using the key fob correctly, though. I kept
Yeah.
it in the tank bag the whole time. Hell, if you wanted to steal my old 1290, you could just walk up to it and turn it on because it was always in the tank bag.
Well, you'd have to figure out how to turn it on.
Yeah, that was the reason why, is because no one knew how to turn
Yeah.
a damn thing on. 'Cause
And
it's so
I
complicated.
think a lot of that is stuff that could be cleaned up if they really wanted to stick to the key fob thing. I think there's a lot of changes they could make with the systems to make it more
But
user friendly.
All they would have to do for me, for a key fob, is just give me a slot on the bike that it goes in. That's all they would have to do. Whether it's on the
Like this
handlebar,
thing, they usually have like this metal post that goes inside of a thing,
like a
that holds
cylinder
it.
that you can
Yeah.
like turn to turn on the bike. Yeah, that you can put the key into. Yeah, that would be great. Like, it's just so freaking stupid, man. Like, I hate my key fob.
I extra hate, at least with yours, it was like, well, they removed the entire like part of the key cylinder where it went and all that kind of stuff, and it was just
they cleaned the handlebar up.
it just
and-
cleaned the bar up, and they had just the one button for it. BMW, man, they take it off and then they put a giant button where the key
Yeah.
used to be, so you still have to go push the button, turn it. I'm like, just put the key back on then. Like you have everything here but the key part.
Yep.
Like, just put the key back on
So
if you're gonna
stupid.
be like that. Like, it's so dumb. It's like touch. It's touch too. It's not like a physical button. It's like a touch sensitive button, a capacitive button or something. I'm just like, why? You didn't need that. You just took it too far.
Yeah, so that is a piece of technology that I'm like not super impressed with.
I think
That's
it
for dang
makes
sure.
it makes sense on like a touring bike, an adventure bike, or something like that, where you've got 15,000 pockets on your gear set.
Even cruisers, like Indian motorcycles, a lot of their bikes have key fobs.
Yeah, Harleys have had key fobs for a
Yeah.
long time too, which I never understood what Harley had going on. And I think a lot of other Harley people didn't understand it either, because John's bike, he didn't understand it. It has a giant lock cylinder thing
A switch that
Already
like is
on
up by
it.
the steering neck that
Yeah.
you can turn, that has like a
that has a key
has one of those
to lock it. Yeah, a barrel, like a
barrel
round
keys.
one.
Yeah, they have the barrel keys.
Yeah.
To unlock them, and you can lock and unlock that switch thing. I actually love it, but I don't love.
But then they'd have key fobs too.
Well, the elegance of their design is bad. Like the knob that you turn is just this big bulky knob and it's not pretty. Whenever you're a manufacturer and you're designing a product, you have an opportunity to make it look good.
Yep.
And they did not do that. So I wish they would have made it look good or look better in some way. But overall, I like the functionality of it. You could even have a bike that doesn't have a key fob, like a lot of Harleys that don't have key fobs, but they have that same switch with the same barrel key, which means you could just walk up to the bike, and if the barrel key portion of that switch is unlocked, you can just turn the switch. But if the barrel key portion is locked, you cannot turn the switch. So essentially, like, while you're riding the thing, you can just keep the barrel key either on the bike or on your person, and you can never lock the bike if you're not going to be worried about the security of it.
Yeah.
And then if you do, like, you know, you're staying, you end up like you're going on a cross country trip and you decide to stay the night at a hotel, then you can lock that thing. It's like, I like it because you basically never have to have the key out. You can just keep the key in your pocket all the time and you can just turn that thing on and off.
You mean like a key fob?
Like a key
It's
fob
wireless?
that isn't as bulky because it's just a little barrel key.
Well, I agree that they need to make key fobs smaller and thinner.
Yeah.
I think it's silly when a car manufacturer or even, you know, bike manufacturers, I think the bike keys are even worse than car keys. But they're like gigantic.
Yep.
And I'm like, it doesn't need to be that. If you ever take one apart, which I'm sure you've taken key
Yeah,
fobs apart
it's a
before,
little tiny board.
it's silly. It's a tiny board, a little thin board with a little thin coin battery, and there's like 15 layers of plastic around it and buttons and rubber pieces and all this junk. And I'm like, get rid of all this. You don't, just make it a nice thin clean piece like a key was, and then you're fine. And it wouldn't be so annoying.
Yep.
But I know the ones for your KTMs are huge. The one on my truck is decent. It's not huge, but it's not small.
And I don't mind key fobs for cars, but it's another feature that, like, if it's on there, fine, whatever. If it's not on there, that's okay too. But for bikes, I absolutely want a hard key.
I like it. I like it on cars, and it was a little different. Like, I had the Mini Cooper, which was really weird. It was in that weird time, like right in the beginning of the 2010s, where they were figuring key fobs out. Mercedes had it plug into the dash.
The big round one.
Yeah,
And would,
it
like,
had the big
go into
round
the
puck.
dash. Yeah,
They went into the dash.
I remember those.
It was wireless, but it was wireless like just to where you plugged it in. It wasn't wireless in the key, like in the car as a whole. And so, like, you had a place to put the key, and it did a little cool thingy where you pushed it in and it like clicked in. It was cute. But my truck, like, you just leave it in your pocket now and you just push the button. And I'm okay with that because you just jump in the car. Like, you always have your keys in your pocket if you're driving somewhere. You got jeans on or whatever, you know.
I don't ever put keys in my pocket.
that's
I
'cause
can't
you're
stand
weird.
keys in my pocket.
But you just push the brake down, you just push the button once, and then the truck does all the hard work for you. You don't have to hold the key to start. You know, they've made it dummy proof now.
Yep.
So, like, I like that. And then there's all the extra stuff, you know, because, like, I hate the key that Kenzie's car has because it's a key and then it's also the buttons on the key. And it just makes it really annoyingly obtuse to stick in your pocket or to do anything with.
It's bulky and it's weird.
So it's like, well, if you're going to have all the buttons, which everybody wants the buttons, then just give me the buttons and we'll be fine. So yeah, that's kind of one of the pieces I think that's kind of on the fence of the practicality. I think it has a purpose
but
for certain
overall,
bikes and for
I
certain
wouldn't say that the technology of a key fob is this new technology, if you want to call it new. I don't think it's hindering reliability. It hasn't caused any issues for me because, like we talked about, a lot of this technology has been out on cars for umpteen years.
Yep.
So it's dialed in so well that it just doesn't really cause any problems. And most of the manufacturers have
They have alternate starting methods with the keys.
alternate starting methods. Like with the KTM, there's a spot on the bike that you can place the key fob if the key fob's battery dies.
Yep.
And it'll RFID, kind of like your chip reader on your credit card when you go to the gas station and
Tap to pay.
tap to pay. it'll pay it like that. So it physically has to touch it, but it'll tap to pay your bike to start it.
Yep.
So that's how KTM gets around it. Indian Motorcycles and all the Polaris products, they have a master pin. So if it doesn't detect the key fob, whether you don't have it on you or if the battery dies, it'll prompt you on the, it depends on the vehicle, but on the modern stuff, it'll prompt you on the radio to enter your master pin, which is a 4-digit pin that you're given when you purchase the vehicle. And if you purchase the vehicle secondhand and you're missing the 4-digit pin, you can go to any Polaris dealer and they'll hook up the scan tool and they can access it for you, and they can disclose it to you. And then what's cool is on a lot of this new modern Polaris stuff, the 4-digit pin that the bike comes with from the factory, it's just a random 4-digit number. Once you own the thing, you can go into the radio and you can set up your own pin. So it'll ask you to enter the 4-digit pin as like a security check, and then it'll be like, okay, what do you want the new pin to be? Now the original master pin will always be there.
Yeah.
It's always there. But the new pin you set up to whatever you want it to be is just, it'll go in place of and allow you to use it. So you can start the vehicle off it. So you don't have to memorize that master pin. You can memorize your own personal pin.
Yep.
So you can make it like your dog's birthday or whatever you want it to be, and it'll start the vehicle for you. The reason I don't like that system, it's clunky and cumbersome to actually do. The reason I do like that system is on my KTM, if I'm out and about 1,000 miles from home and I lose the key fob, I am screwed.
Yep.
But on the Polaris vehicle, I'm not screwed. I can ride home without the key fob.
Yeah.
That's pretty dope.
But if you lose the key fob, you can't get very far from where it was. Unless you lose it on the road, I guess, if it falls out of your pocket or something while you're on the road driving, because it won't shut down. It'd probably yell at you for losing the key, though, right away.
On which vehicle?
On your KTM.
On my KTM, yes. So on my KTM, it will run until you shut it off.
Yeah.
So like
It'll yell at you, though, if you leave the key.
correct. Yeah, the dash will be yelling at you like, "Hey, no key detected, no key detected." So like one of the horror stories is somebody goes out to their garage at their house and they start their bike up with the key that's in their pocket, and then they step off of the bike to go do this, that, or the other, whether it's like they're fumbling with their gear or they're just, they need to pump their tires up or whatever, and they're letting the engine warm up or whatever. All kinds of different reasons, whatever. You just happen to, or for whatever, and you set the key fob down somewhere. Like my uncle did this. My uncle stepped off of his bike and changed his jacket because he wanted to wear a different jacket. Completely forgot the key fob was in the original jacket he was wearing. But the bike was already running and going, so he just walked on over to it. It happened to be a Harley.
Yeah.
He walked on over to it, threw his leg over it, rode it 200 miles away, as us motorcyclists like to do. He's 200 miles away from the house, shuts the bike off, walks inside the restaurant or the ice cream parlor or whatever the heck he was doing, does the thing, goes back out to the bike, tries to start it, won't start, says no key key detected. And he's like, oh no. So he looks everywhere for the key, and then he realizes what he did. So he had to call his wife, who had to drive 200 miles to come give him his key.
Yep.
So that's one of the horror stories of it.
But I think that's poor implementation.
I think so too.
Because, like, in my opinion, what should have happened is, as soon as the key walked away from the vehicle, it should have been screaming at him about the key.
100%.
And then, if he continued to ignore it, as soon as he picks the bike up, clutches in, and puts it in gear, it should have shut off. The computer should have shut it off right then.
So there's the reason they don't is there is actually safety.
Yeah, but it's already parked.
There's safety logic involved in that.
But it's already sitting there. It's already parked. He's already, he's picking it up off the stand, putting it in gear.
Say in this instance, and you have to think about this when you're a manufacturer. say the bike was riding down the road, the key fob fell out of his pocket. He comes to a stop at an intersection, complete stop. And then at that intersection, bike is running, it's in neutral. He wants to go, and he pulls the clutch in, pops it in gear, and the bike shuts off. The traffic behind him's coming. And in that situation, that's when it's like that could present danger. So to the bike, it doesn't know that it's sitting in your garage or it's at an intersection. The bike has no idea.
Well, it could.
And the parameters that you described could have happened at either one. So the bike would have shut off for him sitting at the light, and now he could possibly get rear-ended because traffic is assuming he's moving or whatever, whatever, it presents danger. So to the manufacturer, no matter what happens, the manufacturer always designs the bike to always try to keep running. So like the check engine light comes on. What does the motorcycle do? Does it shut down? Mm-hmm. No, it keeps running. Like they always try to keep it running because in the manufacturer's eyes, that's probably the safest outcome is to keep running, to keep moving forward, to keep, all of that stuff. Because it's just the best likely situation to avoid any incidents. And I think so. I understand that with a key fob system, that's why they're like that. That's why they don't shut down. Like, hey, you forgot your key fob.
Yeah.
It's simply because of that. They have to think of all world scenarios that are. They don't have to think of like literally like aliens landing on the planet and something completely unlikely like that, but like. They have to take in the world of likely what could happen and determine if it's still safe or not.
Well, they could do it based on like kickstand time. Like there's a whole bunch of ways that they could make that work, I guess. Yeah. But I mean, having the bike yell at you for losing the key should be enough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They should take the dash,
just turn the thing off. Like turn the radio off. The radio doesn't work.
Yeah, on a touring bike that has a radio.
That'll for sure get the Harley guys.
Yeah, turn the radio off
attention
and be like, "Hey, key fob," and take the entire dash and like turn it off other than your speedometer. Like give you like the basic necessities for riding, which is like the speedometer, and that's it. And then have it like flashing yellow, like, hey, key fob.
Have it flash, have the hazards come on, do it all. Have the lights flash, whatever.
Just to give you that heads up. But I'd say key fob is my least favorite new technology. And if I could be given the option, I would always choose hard key.
Yeah.
And if collectively the motorcycle market rejected key fobs, I would not be upset about it.
I think that'd be interesting if they offered it like as an upgrade on bikes.
Yeah, like an accessory.
Like if it was if you
or
wanted
option package.
Yeah, if you wanted to option whatever
keyless ignition
convenience package and it comes with keyless. I'd be curious to see if the market would reject that.
I guarantee you,
even if it didn't cost money. I would just be like, hey, pick. Do you want a key or do you not want a key?
I guarantee you there would be a small portion of the market that would still option it just because there's some people that like they want
the goofy stuff.
Well, they want the most expensive one because they think it's the best.
Yeah.
And for those folks, that'll satisfy them. But I would say a majority of the market would skip out on it. Because if you're giving me the option of saving money or not saving money, and it's over what am I missing? I still get the same engine, the same chassis, the same all that. I'm missing the key fob. Yeah, screw the key fob. But also because I hate key fobs.
Well, and it would be your interface is different, Just like if you could change what dash you got with it, or you could change what hand controls came with the thing. It's like it's preference based on how you want to interface with the bike.
Oh, and I meant to bring this up. Reliability with old design bikes versus these modern bikes. So motorcycles are often either the person who owns it doesn't put very many miles on it every year. So after like 10 years of ownership, they only have like like 14,000 miles or even less miles. That's extremely common with motorcycles. The other thing that's really common with motorcycles is they get wrecked before they can put on any sort of real mileage.
Yep.
Just because of the inherent nature of motorcycles, they're hard to operate and they're kind of dangerous. So they get wrecked before they can actually put any real miles on. So you don't really know about the reliability of the thing if it got wrecked out of commission. But of the vehicles that do get a lot of miles, I saw this thing like Harley just purchased back this dude's bike. There was some big write up they had on him. The bike had a gazillion miles. It was over 1 million. I just can't remember if it was like 3 million or something. It's a shitload of miles. Impressive, absolutely impressive. But when they started going through all the stuff that this guy has done to keep this bike running,
Yeah, there was very few parts left that were original.
like he was on like his 6th seat.
Yeah.
Like that's how bad. And it was like a 92 Harley whatever, FX DRS 39er whatever they call their stupid motorcycles. It was one of the big touring bikes.
Yeah.
And it was on like its 6th seat. It was on like its like 4th engine rebuild, or it's on its like 3rd engine, and of that 3rd engine it had been rebuilt several times. The other engines had also been rebuilt several times. So many transmissions, because Harleys have separate engine and transmission. So many transmissions had been done. Like this thing had like no single part on this thing had been left unturned. It was not the same motorcycle, I guess, unless you consider it was the same frame. I think it was the same frame.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's not really reliable. If you had to rebuild it like 15 times to get to 1 million miles,
Yep.
it wasn't really that reliable. You were just willing to rebuild it each time.
It was maintenance. Yeah. It wasn't. And yeah, the reliability question is, did it break down a lot on you requiring repair? Or were you doing the repair as all these things, were these all maintenance items that you were doing regularly? Like, oh, the engine's starting to get tired again. It's time to rebuild it. Or is it broke down on me again and I need to fix it?
And regardless of if he was proactive or reactive, regardless of, it still had to be done.
Yep.
You know, there's a guy who rides an Indian motorcycle that doesn't have 1 million miles on it. He's got about 500,000 miles on it. It's never been rebuilt. That's it. Yep. All he's done is like tires, oil changes, what we would consider normal wear and tear maintenance.
Yep.
And he's put over or like right at 500,000 miles last time I knew, like a year ago or something. He had like right around 500,000 miles. He's from like one of the northern states, Michigan or Wisconsin or something.
Oh yeah.
And he just rides the hell out of this thing, puts boatloads of miles on it, and it's just solid. And I'm not saying Indian is more reliable than Harley. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say these are just two examples that I knew of, and saying that modern versus not modern, you know, classic.
Well, there definitely was never any 60s, 70s, 80s Indian that went 500,000 miles.
Actually, I wouldn't doubt it. There's probably some idiot out there that was willing to rebuild the thing 1,000 times. But you know, the modern stuff, that's how it's going to be. It's going to be more car-like. And nobody ever even...
Well, it's already pretty car-like.
No one ever even
Look at the
thinks
Honda
about
Goldwing
like,
engine.
so
That
like,
basically is a car engine.
A car from the 70s, it used to be like a thing that when it got to 100,000 miles or near 100,000 miles, it goes to the junkyard.
Done, yeah.
It's done. It doesn't have any more life to give. Now 100,000 miles is like your first oil change. Like, it's freaking crazy. These modern cars just go forever and ever. It's super common to see modern cars with 200,000 miles on them being sold on the secondhand market for like expensive.
If you have a car that has a problem before 100,000 miles,
it's a pile of shit.
People are screaming about it.
Oh, it's an absolute pile of shit. At 100,000 miles, it should never have a problem.
Yep.
That's how bikes are going to be. And so you can't talk to me like, oh, well, I want a carbureted bike because I want the simplicity and the reliability. It's neither of those things. Carburetors are complicated.
Nobody that's ever worked on a carburetor or owned a carbureted device has ever said those words.
I know. And like, have you known any professional repair technicians?
How many times has your lawnmower started in the spring?
Because we all hate carburetors. Professional technicians,
Yeah.
like they're garbage. Like they're not good at doing the
No,
thing.
they're a pain in the ass.
So yeah, I can never understand. I'm like, you just want a simple bike to work on, which I can appreciate.
Yeah.
But guess what? You can buy a Royal Enfield. It's fuel injected and it's simple. It has it's an air cooled engine.
And if you want a carbureted bike just because you want the experience of a carbureted bike, then sure.
Yeah, if you want the experience and want to learn how to work on a motorcycle and things like that, okay, you can do that. You can also do it with a fuel injected bike, but
Yeah.
Okay, I guess. And then anybody that's like, well, I don't understand them newfangled things, and I can fix anything, but I can't work on electric. Then you can't work on stuff because even carbureted bikes had electrical systems.
Yep.
So you just can't. You're a bad mechanic.
Older bikes like that had worse electrical systems.
Oh God,
Because
so bad.
everything was analog, so there was 2 wires to everything, or 1 wire to every little thing and every little doodad.
Just so bad.
They still had,
They were a mix of mechanical and electric.
just
points
as many
ignitions
buttons,
and
just as
mechanical
many doodads.
advances, and
Yeah.
just awful systems.
Yep.
And then they had instead of having alternators, they had generators back in the day that would kick out AC voltage, and they were just, it was all so bad.
Yeah.
So when people talk about that crap being like, oh, that's the preferred, that's their preferred way, I'm like, you must not like riding, or you must not have much experience.
Yeah.
Because either of those things, it's like the bike's going to be terrible. You're never going to ride it because you're always going to be working on it. You can't ride it anywhere without having to worry about something falling apart on it. So I don't want that as part of my experience when riding. I would just want to ride. And modern bikes make that accessible. They all you worry about on a modern bike is where to go riding. That's it.
Yeah, very, very few times are modern bikes really broke down. The rare random one-off kind of things
Stuff
happen here and
happens.
there.
Yeah, it happens.
Everything happens. There's always quality, and
You produce 1 million of something, there's bound to be one that's not up to spec, up to par. It happens.
But the failure rates, the percentages of rates,
So
on stuff are
low
so
on the
low.
modern stuff. It's so low.
Yeah.
It's well under 1% failure rate. The KTM camshaft issues. Oh my God, cheese cams, failure rate 1%.
Yep.
So it's like, and yeah, on a grand scale, when you made 100,000 of them, 1%, it's a decent amount of bikes, but ultimately, it's not that high of a failure rate.
Yep.
So it's not as big of a problem as a lot of people are making it out to be. But that's how it goes with most modern things. Is you make a gazillion of them, there's bound to be a failure rate, and most of the time the failure rate's well under 1%.
Yeah. And the failure rate is I would say most of those failure rates are right out of the gate failures. It's defective right off the rip.
Yeah.
Not that it breaks over time. And then, that's why warranties exist. And I would say most of all of those other things happen within the warranty period.
I forget what JD Power is the one who used to rate brand reliability and things. And the way they determined brand reliability, I never agreed with. But and this is for cars, brand reliability was determined based on number of reported failures at the stage of PDI. So that's when the vehicle arrives at the dealer, the technician does his inspection on it, and he finds a failure. So that failure rate plus the failure rate upon delivery of the vehicle to the customer. So after it's gone through the PDI process, then it gets sold, and that customer, the day of they're buying the thing. That's called taking delivery.
Yeah.
They notice a failure there. And then they also take into consideration the failure rate after an X period of ownership, but they only take it for like the first 30 or 60 days. I can't
It's a really short time.
It's a really short time.
Yeah.
That there's a failure, and then they record that, and then they base all of those numbers. They'll see which brand had the highest numbers in those, and which one had the lowest numbers of those, and then they'll rank them as reliable. And it's usually like Lexus wins. It's common for Lexus to win, and then they tout that as like, oh, well, our brand is the most reliable. And it's like, in 60 days, you haven't even done an oil change, man. Like,
Yeah.
how reliable could it be? And lo and behold, there was all the Toyota V6s, like in the Tacomas and everything, popping motors left and right. When people always typically associated Japanese manufacturers with like the greatest reliability on earth. And here's Toyota popping motors all over the dang place. Which I just found hilarious, you know.
Yep.
But the way they measure the reliability at that point is like, I don't feel like it's a good indicator of the brand's actual reliability. I don't see it as that anyways.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I'm sure there's some arguably slightly foul play in how all of that data is organized and kept and maintained.
I can't remember if it's still the case, but I'm pretty sure JD Power's owned by GM.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But GM usually scores pretty high in that as far as I'm aware.
take it for what you will. But JD Power and Associates, when they like give out their awards for the best car, if you consider that they used to be owned by GM, I don't know if they still are, but if they still are, or even if you look back at the time period they were owned by GM, just take that with a grain of salt. That who's paying their paychecks?
Well, the best indicator is to just Google around, and like we always talked about it with Chevy trucks. It's like, oh yeah, you go on Craigslist, you go on Facebook, and just search for your Chevy Silverados. How many of them are high miles? Oh, all of them are high miles? Yeah, it's because they're still on the road and they're still worth money and they have 300,000 miles on them. Now go find an F-150 with 150,000 miles.
They can't give them away.
And they can't give them away, and they're worth half the price, and they're falling apart. And the motors are blown.
Even though
Yeah.
Ford touts is like, we sell the most trucks in the United States, and we
because you get half the life out of it.
our truck's the most reliable. On what scale? Like,
Yeah.
if it's on the 60-day scale, okay, that's not really an indicator of the truck's real life reliability.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I like to do it. Is when we talk like modern bike versus classic bike or old bike, retro bike, look at their resale values. Not the one that's been fully restored. It's somebody's labor of love, because obviously that guy's going to want more. But I'm going to tell you this much: that guy's losing a boatload of money on selling that bike, because he's got 15 grand in it and he's selling it for 5. Versus a modern bike when it's used, like we mentioned before, an 07 Gixxer 750 is going for like 6,500, $7 grand right now in 2025 because the used market's screwed up. But like. That's obscene. Like, why in the world would you pay that much for a 15-year-old Gixxer? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And but go look at a 98 to 02 Gixxer. They can't give them away.
Yep.
Like the old turds like that, people can't give them things away.
Nope.
Why is that?
Because they're carbureted. Probably the primary thing, and because they don't run.
Because it doesn't run, because it's carbureted, because all this. But hey, it's a Japanese bike, and it's the superior reliability. Well, it's a pile of junk, and if you let it sit over the winter, it won't start. And it's just not easy to live with. But as soon as you get to the 04 Gixxer, which is like the first of the modern Gixxer.
Yeah, I think it's when they went fuel injected.
No, they were 01 to 03s were injected.
Were they?
And I think ones before that might have been injected. The bubble butt Gixxers, the ones with said SRAD on the back, SR80, Suzuki Ram Air or something. The bubble butt Gixxers, those were injected, but they were archaic injection, and you had like
Like TBI or something.
you didn't have a choke. You had a fast idle on them. There was a fast idle switch over on the handlebar.
Yep.
But when you got to 04, that's when they went modern fuel injection, and that's just when they got a thousand times better. Yeah. Well, those old ones were computer controlled. It was old school crap.
Yeah.
It was like 80s car fuel injection, because bikes are like 20 years behind cars usually.
80s fuel injection was awful.
It was terrible. It was awful. But then when you got to 90s fuel injection, you got into modern car fuel injection.
Yep.
And as you went on, 2000, 2010s, 2020s, it just got better and better until we got to GDI, and that was a step backwards. But
yeah,
that was more emissions than it was anything else.
Yep.
Well, that rounds it out. Modern's better.
Yep.
Don't buy old, buy new. Love a better experience.
Aaron will appreciate it at the dealership.
And I'll appreciate it. Absolutely. But I'll sell you an old bike if you want an old bike.
Here we go.